We all start out as little babies, right? There's no exceptions to this. We all start out as little babies, a little innocent. I mean, I have two kids. And it's kind of crazy when you think about it that we all start out like that. And then one day, with the wrong mixture of what, I don't know, we'll talk to Alvin about it in a moment, you can turn out to be a vicious, violent little communist one day. Joining me now, Alvin Louis, president of Courage is a Habit. Alvin, I'm amazed, not just at these assassination attempts. I've already accepted that that's the way it is now. Isn't that terrible? But just how many Democrats talk about death, violence. I wish he'd die. I'd love to kill him. I can't believe he's not dead. This is something that has become Democrat discourse in this country. When Democrats gather together, I've heard it a million times, that's how they talk. Just violent people. Why?
Hey, Jesse, good to be back. Thanks for having me. They're just a culture of death. They're a death cult. If you look at everything they believe in, they either want to murder babies at 9 months and a day. If the baby's lucky enough to be born, they want to mutilate them, sterilize them. And then if they get past that, they want to turn them into useless social justice activists so that they're angry and miserable. And anybody that has a difference of opinion is Nazi and needs to die. And I think, in the beginning here, you're like, how does that happen? Because anybody who has kids or around children know just how beautiful and perfect they are, how loving they are. And it's like, how do you go from that 5 or 6 year old, and then by the time they're 15, 16, they're screaming to protect illegal aliens? How does that work? So that only works because we are sending them to these indoctrination centers for 7 hours a day, 5 days a week for 13 years. This is kindergarten through 12th grade. And I don't care how good of a parent you are, Jesse, or anybody else out there. You only have about 3 to 4 hours with them a day for the 5 days a week. And those 3 or 4 hours are not quality hours. You're burnt out. They're burnt out. You're just going through the rigmarole of homework and bath and going to sleep. So they get your children when they are fresh, the most fresh, and their brains are absorbing everything. And in government K through 12, the purpose of government K through 12 is not reading, writing, and math. The purpose of government K through 12 is to turn them into exactly what you said at the top of the segment here. The screaming, angry social justice activists, anything left wing, it doesn't matter what it is, because they can just pump it right into them because they've got the time. And so when in the earlier grades, it comes in as anti-bullying and be kind. That's why parents miss it. But it's always, we all, at Courage is a Habit, we encourage parents to ask the question, through whose lens? Through the lens of you, Jesse, your grandmother, your mother? Sure, awesome. Through the lens of a critical race theorist, through the lens of a transgender cultist, through the lens of someone who wants to flood this country with illegal aliens, then all of a sudden, be kind and empathy takes on a whole different meaning. And so when you see that, we had covered about how the kids were marching to protect ICE, and parents are like, what teacher influenced them last month or a couple months ago? It's no one teacher. If they're 16, they got it at an elementary school or middle school at the very latest. It starts very early.
Alvin, that be kind, compassion, it obviously works on a lot of young people, but man alive, does it work on young women? We really don't fully grasp how much communists target young women and how susceptible they are to that. Yeah, exactly right. I don't want to see deportations. I want to be kind. I want to be seen as kind. Their wonderful motherly nature. It's not stupidity. It's just a wonderful motherly nature that's been perverted and twisted. Young women are prime targets for this kind of stuff.
They really are. And we often say that we don't have an oppression problem in this country, but we do have an idiot empathy problem. This primarily affects females, but if you want to get more specific, it affects pretty well off, insufferable woke white women. You see that in every case, whether it's protecting illegal aliens, revolving door for black and brown criminals, trans and kids. It's almost always this particular group. Because their life is too easy. They have a lot of white guilt. Most of that comes from when, the older ones, of course, they come from when they were in college. This is why there was a huge college push for females. And they just started weaponizing their empathy, weaponizing their kindness, and then that turned into shame. And so, we often talk about white guilt, right? And as you do it so well, better than anybody else. But we don't actually call it white guilt. We actually try not to. And here's the difference why. When you feel guilty, it means you've done something wrong, some action, something you said, something you did, and then you try to apologize for it if it's, if you truly made a mistake, and then you try to move on. So guilt is about something you feel bad about something you did. Shame is about feeling bad about who you are. They're not teaching your kids, your white kids and these white women guilt. It's shame. And this is a shame that has no redemption. This is a shame that you can't rectify that. There is no salvation from this religion. And the only way to do it is to continually just be the mouthpiece for whatever the legacy media tells you, whatever left-wing ideology is being fed to you. And then that's your only hope of redemption, but you never get there. And so this is where the weaponizing of that kindness and empathy in schools is so dangerous. And then it affects females because they truly do want to try to help the less fortunate, not realizing that, and some of them do realize it, but whatever they support actually comes back and hurts them the most. And that's the most insane thing about this weaponization of empathy and this kind of this plague of these low IQ woke white women, because whatever they support actually hurts them more than they hurt someone like you and me. Not to say men don't get hurt when illegal aliens are open borders, but the rape and the stabbing and the mugging and the beatings, it's always old people and women, men and women's sports, women and men's bathroom. You and I, not that it's right, but you and I won't really care if a woman pretends to be a guy, comes into the men's bathroom. Have you seen the men's bathroom? But it's always the women that gets hurt. And unfortunately, there's a lot of women, of course, that don't believe in this. The children are innocent. But this voting bloc for the last 50 years, this radical feminist voting bloc has just been absolute poison to this country. And most of it started in academia.
I like that white shame. I like the way you explain that, Alvin. I'm totally stealing that, and I'm going to give you no credit whatsoever. But I'm stealing that, and I'm using that.
I don't expect you to.
No. All right. So, how do we begin to fix the education system? It seems like such an enormous problem. What should we be doing now? If I'm watching right now, what should I be doing? Do I have any kind of a role to play? What can I do, small or large, to stop this indoctrination system we have?
I'm going to go in order. Everybody can do something. And in fact, we want everyone to do something. This isn't if I don't have a platform like Jesse Kelly, I can't do anything. So in order of small to large, if you have children in government K through 12, okay, if you cannot pull them, and I'm going to put that aside because I know that that's very difficult, but if you can, do everything you can to push to pull them, but I'm going to assume that you can't. This is where our tools come in at courageisahabit.org. So for example, right now, if you go to courageisahabit.org, tool of the week is the 5 teacher union lies. We've created a toolkit and a turnkey letter that we want 50 of your 50 parents, 100 parents, 500 parents in a school district to flood their schools with this letter demanding and holding them accountable for why they're shutting down. Same thing when they did the ICE. If you scroll down our tools list, courageisahabit.org, click on tools, we had the same thing for the anti-ICE. It's about this micro flooding, and what we call it sand in the gears. Yeah, you're not going to change anything with one letter, but it's about that breakdown, that systemic breakdown. And this is exactly what they did with the schools. They didn't get it this way overnight. So this is something and we make it so that every parent can do it. It doesn't matter if you have no idea what a school board is. It doesn't matter if you've never been to a school board meeting. This is for every parent. Then when you get to obviously the next level of that is we want to start seeing parents start to demand that their legislators stop the mental health grants. The mental health grants is what drives, I would say, 90% of the indoctrination in schools because it's coming through mental health. And the parents don't see that. Americans don't see that because the mental health, the school counselors is that Trojan horse that brings in all this critical race theory, queer theory, but they disguise it under supporting all students. That's why you don't see it. And again, if you want to know more about that, just go under courageisahabit.org, click on collections, and click on behind closed doors. That is our exposures of the counselors. So those are the big things that every American can do. Now, back to what I said about pulling your kids. Look, it is very common, Jesse, for people to say you're saving for college. That just rolls off your tongue. Saving for college. You're leaving for college. It is ludicrous. That's the biggest lie that we've sold middle class Americans. Why are you saving and going into debt when your children are already almost baked? For God's sakes, if you're going to go into debt, do it when they're young. Do it when they're little, when they are moldable. Take that risk, take that loan, make that sacrifice when they're 5, not when they're 18 or 17, because you have time to pay off that loan, but you get to decide how they're molded. By the time they get to 18 and 19, all you're doing is turning them over into the next level of indoctrination. And you're never going to get them back. Not to forget the mention of the ROI these days of college. So that's our biggest thing. If you really want to make a difference, starve these institutions. And every American can do that by pulling their kids. And of course, for God's sakes, don't send them to college.
What are the 5 lies teachers' unions tell parents?
Well, let's go through them. The first lie is that we are simply supporting all students. The walkouts are all about children, but it's not. It's all of the walkouts and the teachers' unions are all about driving teacher activists to left-wing Democrat candidates and to demand more critical race theory and more queer theory into schools. It's to demand more sympathy for open borders, kicking in the children of illegal aliens, and then everything comes down because you have all these kids that don't even speak a lick of English. So that's the first one. The second one is that we're only striking for smaller classes and better pay. That's nothing to do with money. It's all about they're taking the dues, and 95% of it goes towards left-wing Democrat either candidates or causes anyway. So it's nothing to do with class sizes. The picket line is basically grassroots. Obviously not grassroots. They'll tell you that. We need more funding to ensure every student has resources. Obviously, none of the money goes towards students or teachers. It goes towards more school counselors, more NGOs to bring in more queer theory, more professional development. And then the last one is that this is just a labor dispute because we're putting kids first. It is not putting kids first. It's all about whatever the left-wing agenda is. And this is not new. I know that there's been a lot of talk with the recent May 1st shutdown in some states, but they've been doing this for well over a decade. This is what the teachers' unions are. That's all they are. They are a Marxist political outfit. And so the stunt is this. This is a 3-step stunt, or the 3-step process. They create the crisis for parents. They create a crisis for parents and Americans by shutting down the schools. They blame the conservatives, and then they demand radical social change. That's the easy step there for their stunts.
Alvin, that is outstanding, man. You come back soon, all right? Thank you. That's pretty good.